Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this evening's webinar, where we're going to be talking about the Parish Giving Scheme. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Mike Power, and I'm the Mission and Stewardship Advisor for the Bradwell area. But before I introduce to you our guest speaker and run through how things are going to work tonight, I'm going to hand you over to Archdeacon Chris.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this, I think, the fourth webinar we've done. So we're now getting hopefully reasonably good at running these things. I'm particularly grateful to those who made the time to be with us, because I do realise that even in the midst of lockdown, we've all got very busy diaries. So thank you for making the time. My name is Chris Burke. I'm the Archdeacon of Barking, and I've been given the job on the Bishop's staff of working with the team delivering Generous God, Generous Disciples. And it's been a really exciting piece of work to be engaged with. But the practicalities are the really important thing. And so it's really good that tonight we're able to look at some of those practicalities in the work of the Parish Giving Scheme. Before we go any further, perhaps it would be good for us just to pause and to pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to reflect and to learn, to be challenged, to be given hope and opportunity. And we pray that you would help us as we reflect on the Parish Giving Scheme. We learn what it can bring to our life, and we ask questions and make inquiries. We pray that you would give us open minds and inquiring hearts. This we pray in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you very much, Chris, for that. And so it's my great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Richard Jones. Richard is lead parish giving advisor within the Diocese of Hereford, and he's previously served in 2 dioceses within the Church of Wales. Altogether, he's been working in this whole area of generous giving and stewardship for 18 years. Richard's passionate about resourcing the mission and ministry of the church, especially rural ministry, which I have to say is very fortunate, Richard, isn't it, as you are working in what I probably think is probably the most rural diocese in the Church of England. So the plan tonight is that Richard will give his presentation, and there'll be time for questions at the end. But we're going to use chat as a way of dealing with the questions, so you can send your questions at any time. And Tom, our communications director, who is wonderful behind the scenes, sorting everything out, will gather those questions and we'll put them to Richard when he's finished the presentation. So over to you, Richard, and thanks so much for being with us.
Hey, good evening, folks. Good evening, sisters and brothers from the Diocese of Hereford, right over on the opposite side of the country. Behind me, you will see that's the parish here. I have no complaints about the scenery. It's a rather beautiful part of the world in which to work. God's creation is certainly a blessing here. And right behind me, you see the international border that is the line between Wales and England. So we are right on the border here. In fact, the parish, some parishes straddle the border. So more about that in a moment. I'm going to screen share my slides, and I'm going to go through them at a fair pace. I'm going to share them with you afterwards as a PDF, so don't worry if you don't catch anything or you didn't get a note. That's fine, you'll have them to look at afterwards. And then just a short video towards the end to learn something from the Diocese of Oxford. So we really are covering all geographical areas this evening. And then we're going to have a Q&A, as I say, to pick up those things from the chat and anything else that comes to mind. So it'll be a fairly quick run through, but I'm trying to make it comprehensive as well. All right, here we go. Let's have a look at some slides. Okay. Cool. Okay. All right, I think we can all see the screen. We're in business. So yeah, Generous God, Generous Disciples. And I've entitled tonight, Growing Together and Giving Together, Working Together, Growing Together and Giving Together. Already been introduced, so I don't want to say anything really more about me, other than this evening, of course, I'm in a slightly different capacity because I'm, as it were, representing the Parish Giving Scheme, which is not of any particular diocese. In fact, it now works with 30 Church of England dioceses, Diocese of Hereford being one of them, and one of the leading Parish Giving Scheme diocese. And I guess that's why I was asked to come and share with you this evening. So just very quickly then, a bit about Hereford, to give you some context. 360,000 population. That is tiny compared to the Diocese of Chelmsford, I'm fully aware. It is in fact the smallest diocese population-wise, other than the Isle of Man or Soda of Man in the Church of England. However, it is 1,600 square miles of largely empty countryside, other than churches, of which we've had 409 of those, and 365 parishes. We are the most rural diocese in England, and some other interesting stats. Perhaps we have the highest church attendance percentage-wise of population in all the Church of England, and we are covering Herefordshire, South Shropshire, and small parts of Worcestershire, Monmouthshire, and Powys. So actually, we have parishes that are across the border and straddle two countries, which makes life interesting for managing it. These aren't the things I'm going to do this evening, but I just want to put them up here because I want to say that there is a wider context. And whilst the Parish Giving Scheme is a super thing to do, something I think all parishes should do, it is only one of the tools available to us. And on its own, it's not nearly as effective without all the others. And if you have a look at Church of England stewardship resources or through your diocesan resources, you'll quickly pick up these sorts of headings: Giving for Life, and the whole sort of suite of resources for PCCs to help better encourage generous giving in parishes. Things like teaching and preaching and communicating and thanking, reviewing, and you can see all the rest there. Some of them you may have already used.
I've had it.
Good. Up on the pink one, which is parish.
Yeah.
Okay. So very
Thank
quick.
you. That's nice.
So we're going to do this evening, what is the Parish Giving Scheme and how does it work? I want to look at some benefits and advantages, and then very quickly look at some good practice and some success stories before we come to our Q&A. So let's look at the mechanism first, as it were, how it works. So what is it? Parish Giving Scheme is actually, it's a not-for-profit charitable company based out of Gloucester, originally set up by the Diocese of Gloucester, but quickly embraced by other dioceses. So it's been set up now as an arm's length organisation. Receives grant funding from the Archbishop's Council, various other small grant-making bodies, and the diocese of which are members pay an annual fee to use it, and that's how it runs itself. It basically manages donations for parishes through a direct debit management system, which also claims gift aid. And it is aiming to combat the challenge of static giving in parishes by allowing donors to increase their giving, if they wish to, each year in line with inflation. And that is one of the key factors, and I'll come to that in a moment. And alongside encouraging good stewardship and preaching and teaching and growing as disciples, it provides a step change towards a healthy giving base for all parishes. And we know how important that is if, and as we all wish, and is all our aim, actually the church is to grow and to flourish in all ways. These are the things we look to get out of the Parish Giving Scheme, so I'm going straight to the end almost, because I think these are the important things to remind you that we're trying to achieve. If PGS becomes your principal funding method in a church, we aim to have inflation-proofed giving, maximised cash flow, minimised administration, and freeing up, therefore, parishes to concentrate on the things that we should be doing around growing mission and ministry. All too often, you'll know that PCC meetings are dominated by talk of finance, yet we never seem to solve the issue, and we have lots of God's work to do. So, donations through the scheme use a direct debit. That's not a standing order, and it's different. And I have to say, I get a lot of people telling me they give by direct debit and they don't. Most people don't seem to know the difference. They go by standing order. This is a direct debit. And that means it's a more flexible product. So first of all, it can be a monthly, quarterly, or annually given direct debit. And each donation is restricted to a parish church. It cannot go anywhere else. It is only for the church that the person wishes to gift to. If a person wishes to give to more than one church, they can set up more than one gift. And we have actually quite a lot of people who do that. And the Parish Giving Scheme is a free-to-use service for parishes. And that means that all the donation plus the gift aid is received by your parish. There is no fee, and nor will there be any fee, because that is not the agreement by which PGS operates. Very quickly then, to cover the easy bits and the obvious questions, how does a person donate? Well, they can donate by telephone. That was a service that was introduced at the early part of the COVID-19 restrictions, and about a third of all donations now come through on the telephone. People can donate by post. That has always been the traditional way, and some people still like to do that. So we issue forms, direct debit forms generated by the Parish Giving Scheme to churches for you to distribute with your local materials and letter. And some people like to fill those in and send them into Gloucester to set up their direct debit. And from March 21, and something that we've already been piloting in Hereford, because we are a pilot diocese for this, we've moved to online donations for the Parish Giving Scheme. And this is just a quick whiz through of some of those pages. It's really proving very, very popular and very useful for our parishes, this online giving function for PGS. You can see there the opening page. It's got a full search function, so you can find your church. It pulls on the maps for the churches, or the address, or within a certain distance of a postcode, all sorts of search functions. And every single church in the Church of England is on this facility. Okay. The donor is taken through a step-by-step simple process to set up. Having chosen a church, it's basically personal details, the requirements in terms of what you want to give and how you want to give it, a direct debit agreement, setting up your own account. So as a giver, you have a username and password, which means that you got your own page and you can manage your own giving and change it, stop it, start it, put it up, put it down, change the frequency, change your gift aid status or your inflationary increase status. It really is super useful and unique to the giver. So only the giver can see that. And in the same way, the church has a digital portal for PGS now. Every church will have that. And your nominated Parish Giving Scheme person in the parish, usually your gift aid secretary or your treasurer, obviously bound by the same rules of confidentiality as all other giving, has a ability to log in and see at any given point what the Parish Giving Scheme income is, what the gift aid is, what the inflationary increases are, and therefore any report to the PCC on finance is always, as it were, in time and live, which is really useful. And then just a quick illustration to end this section about how it works. And what is interesting here is the dates, particularly around the edge of the outer ring. So first day of the month, the donor makes the donation. Obviously, it's all through the bank, so no cash changing hands, which is a great cause for celebration among lots of treasurers, and nor checks either, which are a lot of work. So donation first day of the month arrives in the PGS account on the third day of the month. That's the bank time allowed for that. PGS immediately then claims the gift aid from HMRC, does all that for the parish, so you haven't got to do it. And then the church is paid its initial gift on the 10th day, straight into the church bank account, along with all the other gifts that have been received that month for that church. And then the PGS, as soon as it receives the gift aid from HMRC, adds it on and forwards it straight to the parish. And at the moment, that's coming in usually about 5 or 6 days later. So yeah, usually about the 15th of the month, we receive our gift aid. And we receive our gift aid every month. And of course, that's a big advantage too, not having to do a yearly claim and waiting 12 months for the income. So it improves cash flow and you know exactly when it's going to come in. Some people might ask about security and personal data, and it's a very good question. So just so you know that PGS as an operating financial company has to meet all the external regulations, both of the FSA, the Financial Authority, also data protection rules, HMRC requirements, and all the usual reporting requirements of a charity with the Charity Commission. So it is a very stringent process, and it is reviewed, all those things are reviewed annually. And uniquely, perhaps, none of this information, no donor information is available to anybody else, and it's not stored on a hard drive anywhere. Every day that information is removed from the hard drives at the PGS offices and uploaded to a secure remote cloud. In fact, it's removed to 2 remote clouds for a backup, but it's not actually held anywhere in hard copy that anybody could access. So we are exceptionally confident in data security. Now, the bits that you probably want to know is, well, that's how it works, but what's the advantage to my church? There are many, so I just want to pick up on probably about 3 principal ones this evening. Parish Giving Scheme. The annual giving review, something that we hope in a well-run church should happen each year, is triggered really automatically by people increasing their giving by inflation if they choose to. I've got some figures on that in a moment. So it becomes almost part of the parish cycle, the normal course of events, and it's good to get that into the bloodstream because it really does become a difficult thing to do every year, or at least we make it very difficult. People who are opting for that inflation increase are written to annually. You can't just increase somebody's giving, even if they've just agreed to it automatically. They still have to, under law, receive notice 6 weeks in advance in writing to say that their giving will be adjusted in line with their instructions, and give them the option to withdraw those instructions or amend them if they wish. Hardly anybody does, but that is done as good practice. So everybody knows what they're giving, where they're giving it, and when they're giving it. And gift aid is claimed regularly and paid straight into the church bank account in super extra quick time. And that obviously is a big advantage if you're on a tight cash flow in a church and you need all the income each month that you can get. I want to just pick up on one of those, and that's the inflation thing, because I think possibly we forget very easily how important this is. The biggest cause of financial difficulty within churches is static income. I do remember going very early in this diocese to a church who were very proud of their large bank of standing order givers who give regularly and faithfully each month. And they were a well-run church with a budget, and they stretched themselves every year to pay a good offer for their parish share, their ministry share. And they couldn't quite understand why it was that they were always so badly off, and so things seemed to be getting worse. It wasn't until somebody mentioned these large bank of standing order givers as part of their planned giving base that I suddenly thought to ask the question. I said, can I see the detail of those standing orders? And I don't need to see the names. I don't want to see the names, and not that they'd mean anything to me. And once we reviewed those standing orders, out of the 30 standing orders that that church had, we reviewed them back, and of the 30, 27 had not altered for the last 7 years. What had altered in the last 7 years were the church's costs, which, like every other church, yours included, will go up every year, because every year the insurance will go up, every year the electricity and the gas will go up, because that is inflation. And they were simply worse off because of static income and increasing costs. So beating inflation by linking our income to our costs is rather essential. So in 2017, £50 plus the gift aid equaled £62.50. And taking average increase on RPI since that time, by 2027, that £50 gift will need to be £68.51 just to be worth the same amount. That's not worth any more, it's just the same. And I think, therefore, the corrosive value of inflation is missed and underestimated by parishes. And what parishes do, of course, is when they're short in the first year, they might get away with it. They might get away with it in years 2 or 3. But when your church is short in years 4 and 5 and 6, we either have to be dipping into reserves or we fundraise harder and harder. And it's plugging that gap that becomes, in the end, impossible, because that is not a solution. And therefore, something like this, which links income as far as possible to cost, is a great thing to have. And though, therefore, over those years cumulatively, that's an extra 277.68 a year to the church if the person has gone for the automatic inflationary increase. Lest anybody think that sounds alarming, I can show you some statistics on that in a moment, but just bear in mind that inflation linking an average gift and inflation even at 2%, which is not at the moment, an average gift to the church is usually pennies a year, not pounds a year in increase. So nobody's being asked to remortgage their house or sell all their businesses for the sake of the church. But lots of little amounts make a big difference. So in this diocese in Hereford, I think, no, actually that's an average figure. Nationally, 55% of people inflate their gifts when they join the Parish Giving Scheme. So that's over half your people will do that. And I would very much suspect that would be the same in Chelmsford. An additional 15% of those inflation-proof givers then go on to increase further by superinflation, or because the parish has sent out a general appeal or reminder. And only 0.5 donors have reduced their contribution. So those ought to be figures which encourage your church. In the Diocese of Hereford, we have 89% of our parish giving scheme gifts have gift aid applied, which is a super average, and 62% of our people auto-inflate above the COE average of 55, 56%. So we do quite well on that here. And this is a rural, traditional, perhaps in many places, conservative with a small c, diocese. So when people say to me, our people won't do that, I'm sorry, I don't believe it. If 62% of people in the Hereford diocese will do it, I'm quite sure that it'll be a thing for you. Some of the things you will want to know as the PCC leads and folks who are interested in church finance particularly, you'll want to know about the money, won't you? I know you'll want to know about the money. This is not actually a feature that it should be your sole reason for taking up the parish giving scheme. But it is a singular advantage. And that is that when people switch the way they give, they increase the amount they give. That always happens, okay? And if you stop and think about that, you'll know that happens, and it happens now in your church. People go from cash to envelopes, the average increases. If people go from a weekly envelope to a standing order, the amount they give generally increases. If people go from a standing order to a direct debit, it increases further on the parish giving scheme. And the parish giving scheme is the highest level of average planned giving to our churches. Across the top there, you can see Winchester, Liverpool, Gloucester. You've got what you would describe really as a fairly affluent diocese in Winchester, a mix of urban and suburban and rural. Liverpool is very much an urban and less wealthy diocese, and Gloucester, more of a rural patch. And you've got their giving along the top line as it was before. So that's planned giving as an average before the parish giving scheme came along. And there's your average parish giving scheme gift along the bottom. I can witness to those and testify to those figures here in the Diocese of Hereford, that those happen in every one of the parishes I join up through PGS. Average increases of 40% to 60% in giving in a church are typical and perfectly normal when we move to PGS. Diocese of Hereford's had a 51% increase in its average giving when we moved to our parishes to PGS. There's the figures for us. We have a very low basic giving. We have a low average income here. And we have significant rural poverty issues in parts, even though it's very beautiful. And therefore, you know, boosting our average giving levels for our churches is essential. But we've had a 51% rise in our average giving to our churches. And those are significant sums. In a small rural church, that is the difference between life and death, possibly, on your budget. You won't know these places, but I thought you'd like to see some parishes, and there they are. They're actual parishes, you see. So if you can notice that those increases are really wide and varied. I mean, from 156% increase in giving, albeit from a miserably low base, but even a 35% increase in giving. And I would ask you just to think about what that would mean for your parish if you had that sort of level of increase in your giving levels, and how that would really very much not just change your budget, but alter your whole sense of being and working and living there as a church. One thing that's important to say, of course, is reference particularly to the recent situation, the COVID-19 situation and suspension of worship. I do remember saying to a church well before this, and I obviously had no insight whatsoever that this was going to happen to us all, but I do remember saying to a church, well, what would happen if we had to, to stop services and how would we manage? And oh, well, that'll never happen. Well, here we are. So cancellation of services for those churches on Parish Giving Scheme here, that has made very little, if any, difference to their income, because that has continued to come in. In fact, I would tell you that Parish Giving Scheme has grown here during the COVID-19 situation because more people have found it convenient to switch to it. But you do need to think as well that there are other factors. Not all churches anymore have the same sort of worship patterns that they did 10, 20, 50 years ago. It was commonplace for most churches to have a weekly service. That is not the case in all parishes, and it's certainly not the case in rural parishes. And therefore, the frequency of worship affects how people give and can give. And if you are totally relying on people giving in a service, and you're not having a service, or you're not having a service so often, or people are not coming so often, and we know that to be the case, then that will affect how you do planned giving. And obviously a direct debit takes care of all that. And then finally, to end this quick section, I would remind again that an integrated approach, the Parish Giving Scheme is the way we give, and it's a super way to give, but it has to go hand in hand with why we give, with a good local stewardship program and a good local message. And what you are encouraging people to give to has to be both clear and positive and frankly worth giving to. I can give you the best way to give in the world, but if you can't answer why people ought to give to your church, then we're not starting in the right place. So I would encourage you to do that as an exercise when you think you're going to move to the Parish Giving Scheme. That will involve preaching and teaching about stewardship regularly, communicating effectively, and that's the job of the whole leadership team, lay and clergy, and all the PCC. And it's part of what we want to see in every church. I thought I'd share some experience from parishes. So a little bit of a survey. I asked 10 parishes. This is a bit like Family Fortunes. We asked 10 parishes who have successfully developed the Parish Giving Scheme in their wider community to state what they felt were the key points of their success. And I wonder what they said. You see, it's always good to talk to somebody who's done it well and ask them, what did they think they did right? Because this will be useful to you when you come to join the Parish Giving Scheme. I'm not going to go through them all, but here are some important ones. A lot of them said differentiation, a localism. So yes, you've got this great scheme which is all done for you, but you need your local message, you need the story of your local church, and you need to very much tell people why it is that their giving will make a difference to what you are doing there. And only you can do that. That's your message, because what you are doing at St. Leonard's is not going to be the same as the folks at St. David's. And it will be different in every single church across your diocese. But all your churches have a good message to share: rural, urban, large, small. Energy and enthusiasm, and I try and foster that in all our people, and we look for very good and enthusiastic people to promote a parish level. Doesn't need to be the job of anybody in particular, the church warden or the treasurer. They're often involved, but if you've got somebody keen on the PCC who's happy to lead this project, let them lead the project and work with the treasurer. If they've got the skills for the task and they've got the enthusiasm, that's more important than about the role they hold. Clearly communicate a vision of your church. I mentioned that, and work within your context. What you would do in an urban context is not the same as what you would do in a rural context. Be clear and confident in your leadership, and that means that you need to have credibility and trustworthiness. When we joined the Parish Giving Scheme here, I'll tell you this very quick story. I went to see the bishop, the diocesan bishop, and he said, Richard, I've heard all about the Parish Giving Scheme, and I'm a convert. I didn't used to think it was worth doing, but now I've decided that this is a good thing to do. And I said, excellent, Bishop, I'm very pleased to hear it. I'm grateful for your support. What do you need from me? He said. I said, well, Bishop, you can come out with me on the road, and we're going to do 4 launch events, and I'd like you to come and speak to the good people of the diocese. He said, I'd be very happy to do that, and tell them of my Damascus Road conversion. Great, Bishop. What else do you want from me? Says the bishop. And I said, Bishop, first thing I'd like you to do is set up your giving and make a gift through the Parish Giving Scheme. At which point he went pale. Well, I already give my giving. I already do it in other ways, etc., etc. And I said to him what I will say to you. Bishop, you cannot go and ask other people to do what you are not prepared to do yourself. You cannot stand up the front and say to people, this is a great scheme, I'd like you all to use it. Because if somebody then says to you, and how do you get on with it, Mrs. Smith or Mr. Jones or whatever? Oh, well, I don't actually use it myself. Then your parish initiative is sunk from the start. Okay, so you must use it yourself. Okay, so I would start home with yourself, start with the PCC and your leadership. Okay, not everybody will want or be able to use it, but actually as many of you as possible to gain credibility. And if you wish to continue giving another way as well, that's fine, but at least put something, however little, through the Parish Giving Scheme so that you're on it. Please tell individuals that all their giving makes a difference and how it made a difference. And be very clear and direct with them in your ask, okay? Don't do the Church of England thing of being polite for about 3 pages long, but never actually asking them what you want. Tell them what you want. And then know your givers and build a relationship, and know your potential givers and build a relationship, okay? And those 2 things are key words. Relationship. Giving is all about relationship, not about money, it's about relationship. You need to be able to answer this question, and I've already challenged you with this, and I would say it's the first thing to do. You need to be doing this on a regular basis. Why should someone give to your church? I would ask that question. It's very difficult to be objective when you've been there a very long time, perhaps, or you think it's marvelous. I'm sure it is. But actually be objective and say, if somebody was walking in here for the first time and they're thinking about joining our church, why would they want to give their money to the work that goes on here? And you need to be scribbling and filling a side of A4 with good reasons. You might tell me you've got lots of good reasons, but you need to get them down on paper, and you need to then communicate those to other people as to what they might be. Because if I walk into your church for the first time, I don't know anything about it. And this is something, we're not going to do it tonight, we don't have the time, but why give, you might want to do with your PCC. This is what I do with my PCCs sometimes, is I ask them, do they have a favorite charity? And perhaps it's one of these on the screen. And people, yeah, I like the British Red Cross, or I like Tear Fund, or I like the lifeboats, or whatever it might be. And then we have a chat, and we say, well, why do you think that's a good charity? And they tell me all about their story, and there's always a story. And that's why I think it's a good charity, and that's why I give to it. And I try and ease out of that and say to people, well, now think about your church and do that exercise. Why would you give to it? And what's good about it? And what would encourage other people to give to it? And there are lots of reasons why people give to a church, and we're not going to do that one tonight either. But I want you to think about them when you're communicating about the Parish Giving Scheme. And there'll be reasons of faith, there'll be reasons of vision, there'll be reasons of scripture, there'll be reasons of belonging. There'll be reasons of wanting to make a difference. There'll be reasons of contributing towards the cost or the building. The biggest single reason why somebody starts giving to their church or increases their giving to the church is a very simple one. And this has got nothing to do with the church. Every charity will tell you the same. And that's because somebody asked them. Somebody asked them. Simple old thing, really. Don't forget the value of asking somebody to give. Let's move on to look how this might spread out in your church and some application of the parish giving scheme. I'm a firm believer that we're not just to try and get more money out of the same few people. That is not my approach. And that is the danger sometimes in the church, of course. I believe that what we're trying to do is build and grow a church, but we're also trying to build and grow a generous community and a community that is wider than just the church. And to tell some people about what we believe about generosity into the culture of society today. And therefore, this thing that we have here, which we call Now Into the World, has as its mission line, if you like, its catchphrase, using the gifts God calls us to do the work God calls us to do. We see giving and generosity as empowering, not just keeping the show on the road. And folks, I'm passionate about the life of the church, but I could not have done this for 18 years if it was just about keeping the wheels on the cart. That would be no satisfaction whatsoever. It really is about seeing God at work through how God uses all that we have, including our giving. And we're all on that start-finish journey that the church is there, and it never ends, however young or old we are. And so I want to grow the number of givers as well as the levels of giving. It is not sustainable to have ever-reducing congregations, fewer and fewer people giving more and more and more. It doesn't take a financial whiz kid to work out that model is going to go pop at some point. Therefore, we have to grow the number of givers to a healthier, broader giving base. And we have to give an opportunity for the wider community to give financially to their church. And that is easier said than done. And it's easier said than done in some places than others. But we do know that there are plenty of people who are on the fringe of church, for instance, and particularly in rural communities, there are plenty of people, and I know that from my experience here, who will give to the church who don't even come that regularly, but want to support it. I'm not going to do this exercise this evening, but I would also encourage you into this as you're thinking. And remember, you're going to get these slides so you can go back to them. And that's about mapping your relationships as a church. One of the first things I say when we go into the parish giving scheme in the parish is, and who are your givers? Who are your givers? And they scratch their heads and they look at me and they say, well, that's obvious. It's these people. It's us. And I go, oh, is anybody else? Oh, well, yes, there's those people as well. And oh, there's those other people. And then there's those other people we don't see very often, but they give. And then there's all the people who give to this or that or the other thing. And actually, the church is a whole network of relationships. And if you would start mapping those, you would soon fill a good page with the detail. And I think that's not just important, of course, from a giving perspective. That's important from a mission and pastoral care and ministry perspective. We need to better know who we are and understand who our people are and all the relationships we have. That particularly comes into play, though, with the parish giving scheme, because it's our experience that we're able to reach lots of givers that we'd never reached before, or perhaps not for a long time. And in a nutshell, I would say if people feel that they have a relationship with something or someone, they are hugely more likely to give generously and favorably towards it. You stop and think about that, that is obvious. It's apple pie stuff, folks. If people are in relationships with something or somebody, they're going to give more generously towards it. That is the difference between coldly asking for money and being in a warm relationship where people want to be generous to you. I want to encourage, particularly all of you, but I want to encourage some rural churches which might be thinking, oh, well, you know, this is a bit too much for us, this is overkill. Well, of course, the advantage of the small rural churches is the reduction in admin and the gift aid claim for you and the cash flow and all that. But can I also just point out these rural churches in the most rural of Herefordshire and Shropshire? Those figures there of 400, 200, and you can see all the little percentage numbers, they refer to the number of givers that has now come about as joining the parish giving scheme. So 400% is basically that church has 4 times as many planned givers as it did when it started the parish giving scheme. Okay, The next one, twice as many givers. I would just point to the fact that a rural church here in the most rural diocese is, well, 50% of my congregations have under 12 people in them. That's a revealing statistic. These are tiny communities. When you have an increase fourfold in the number of planned givers, threefold, twofold, that radically transforms the life of that church. And I don't think that can be overestimated. So come on, rural churches, there's a lifeline here for you. So to wrap up on this section, and then we'll watch the quick video and then we'll have a Q&A. We've looked at the who and the why, but let's look at the how we might do this in a parish. That's His Holiness the Pope. That's not the Bishop of Hereford, by the way. Look at that photo for a minute. Just stop and look at that photo. That is a very, very clever photograph, folks. There is a Pope seemingly relaxed, posing for a selfie with all those young people. And, you know, we can look at that and think, isn't that great? The engagement with young people, his approachable and accessible style. He's embracing modern technology. You can look at all that. That's all great. What I'm looking at is this. Somebody is taking a photograph of the Pope, having his photograph taken with the young people. What that is a very clever piece of communication. That is a smart photograph, folks. That says everything that you want it to say about ministry. So when I'm talking about telling the story of faith in your parish, you can have 100 words, but if you can find a great photograph, you're on a winner. And I guess you're not going to have the Pope around next Sunday, but we could at least, I'm sure, find some photographs that are of people engaging and thriving in the life of Christ in your parish, that says everything about why people would want to give. Future focus it. It's not about, you know, just recovering a poor situation. This is about, what is the church going to be doing in 5 years, 10 years? Yeah. Don't say to people, can we give to the Parish Giving Scheme? Because if you don't, we're going to be closed in 12 months. Nobody wants to give to an organization that's dead or dying. You've got to cast, you know, a vision further. If we had these sorts of funds, this is what we would like to do. Have a passion for giving. Raise institution to the level of a family. Make it about belonging and being loved and being generous and warm. Not about just keeping, you know, the show on the road of the church services, the church meetings, and the way we've always done things. Build trust and awareness, especially through your credibility and your communication. Be creative and have fun. And then, as I say, images always engage more than text. So some of the opportunities we use, I suspect you have all these in your parishes. Regular Sundays to promote giving, mail drops, special services, the big ones like carol services, lunches, appeals around the church building, preaching, visiting preachers, you know, all the rest of it. Weddings, baptisms, funerals, we include all those in our Parish Giving Scheme communications. A word at the gate, you know, as you go around the community, talking to people, talking and asking, far more effective than a letter, even though you're going to do your letter. You know, things where parishes do community surveys, engaging people in the wider life of the church about what they think. And then obviously harvest is always a great time, especially in rural churches, to do parish giving. We sometimes do events. There's a breakfast, so parish breakfast is an ideal opportunity. That's a Saturday morning at one of our churches, having a parish breakfast to roll out the Parish Giving Scheme. I usually go along, the vicar says something about the vision of the church there, or one of the lay leaders, and I say something about PGS, and it's usually light, throw in a few jokes, we all have a laugh, and we have some good bacon rolls, and everybody goes away with a letter and a form. It's not complicated. Another take on that here, cheese and wine evening. You know, somebody who's got a grand house, then you go and ask them if you can borrow it, and their grand garden in the summer. We haven't all got those, I get that, but I got invited to this one, which was rather nice. And on this occasion, Waitrose sponsored us, so we were very pleased with that as well. So look for the opportunities, folks. And this one, Sunday lunch. a sit-down Sunday lunch, which we did for a parish and launched the Parish Giving Scheme. There's always opportunities. I'm going to share a video now with you. So it's just a few minutes long. This is from the Diocese of Oxford. I wanted to share this with you because this is a parish, and this is a parish officer speaking about their experience of joining the Parish Giving Scheme and the advantages to this actual parish. I think it's the parish, well, it's Oxford Diocese. We'll see now.
It's a good campaign. It makes people think and reconsider their giving. And it is really easy. It's easy to sign up as a church, it's easy to sign up as an individual donor, and it's also easy to manage. We as a church faced several challenges at the time, and one of the biggest one was finances. In fact, it was so bad we had to stop our direct debit for parish share during the year because we simply didn't have enough money on our bank account. Our vicar at the time heard about Parish Giving Scheme as some sort of miracle cure for planned giving, and he asked me to look into it as I was a member of the stewardship team at the time, and I knew we needed to do it. And I knew my fellow PCC members felt the same, but we really didn't have anybody to drive it. So I said, well, let's do it if somebody else from the PCC does it with me, and we decided to go ahead. We really wanted to achieve two things. One thing was to reduce our admin burden. We didn't have a treasurer at the time because nobody wanted to touch that job with a barge pole because there was so much admin involved. And we didn't have a stewardship recorder at the time, so we had absolutely no clue how much money we would get a month. Nobody claimed any gift aid, so it was really bad. So that was the key reason. We wanted to reduce our admin burden. But on the other hand, we also wanted to put our stewardship income on a regular footing, because our vicar had just given notice. We knew we were heading into a vacancy in a few months' time, and really we wanted to lock in that regular giving as far as we could. One thing we got right was the timing. We did it as part of our stewardship campaign, a 6 weeks campaign in October and November, culminating in our stewardship Sunday, end of November. So that was right to do it there and then. It needs a few months because you get a monthly report as part of the stewardship of the Parish Giving Scheme. So you need to monitor success over a few months' time. And by that time we were finishing just before Advent. We didn't want to go into Advent with following up, so that was right. The second thing we did right was how we sold it to our congregation. We didn't sell it as to raise money, we sold it as let's reduce the admin burden. It wouldn't have worked to argue about this is about increasing giving, because ours is a congregation completely worn out by requests for money. Every year they hear about requests to increase giving because we are facing yet another deficit. It just wouldn't have worked. So we had a lot of the older congregation using the envelope scheme. When we explained to them how costly that was, they really got behind that move to the new system, and we managed to completely eliminate the envelope scheme. It has improved our cash flow as we now get monthly gift aid claims. We have been able to fill crucial roles. We now have a stewardship recorder, we now have a treasurer, and it's really down to reducing the admin burden. We are now a year into the scheme. I think we need a follow-up. So it is very important that after a year's time, and that will be a wish to Parish Giving Scheme, to have letters sent out to the givers, thanking them for their previous gift and asking them to reconsider and review their giving. Yes, we have the option to tick increase with inflation, but I don't think that does justice to people who are still working, who might move to a better paid job. So I think it's very important that after a year's time, people are being asked again to review their giving and make a new commitment, if you like. I had a really good experience. When I first talked about it, I had a couple of older ladies who really got behind it. They championed it, and they convinced other people of their circle to go with it, explained to them why they needed to do it, and so that was wonderful for me. They really championed it. What I would say to a church considering moving to Parish Giving Scheme is just go for it, do it. Even if your circumstances are such that you think you have no chance to ever do it, as long as the PCC is behind it, you only need 1 or maybe 2 people to drive it, and you can do it. Just do it. And the other thing is, just make sure you can convert as many as you can at the very beginning. That's so important. It just helps you afterwards.
Okay, so let's just finish. Let's come back to the beginning. Okay, right, last few slides, and then we're done. Okay, so very quickly then, where'd you go from here? Well, the discussion back at your PCCs and with your leadership team. Discuss it with your officers in the diocese responsible for generous giving, and they'll be able to support you and help you. They'll be able to do that as well when you decide to move forward with this. In this diocese, we're able to, I'm sure it's the same there, provide various combinations of resources, leaflets, direct debit forms. We have posters. We have the giving tokens to put in place on the Sunday collection if people wish to use those. We have bookmarks in this diocese, which we put in our prayer books and hymn books with a prayer on them and a promotion of the Parish Giving Scheme. And we have various things for parish magazines and websites and all those to support you. And we think that goes a long way. So to finish up then, plans, hopes and prayers. It's a great scheme, but all this is actually, and we do want every church in every diocese to join. That is our hope. But actually, what lies behind it is our intention that we can fulfill all those Giving for Life aims about a healthy, generous church. But more so that all, as individuals and as a Christian community together, that all our giving for God is the best that it can possibly be. And I firmly believe as Christians that is what we should strive for, and that's what I hope we all aim for, that in all aspects of our lives we're being the best we can be for God. And our giving is there too. And that is because we want to see the life of the local church to flourish, and that's wherever you are, large or small. And yeah, let's just finish up. I've put the contacts on the screen because I think that will be useful for you and your diocese to speak to your own folks there, and they'll be on your PDF as well. And that is it from me. So I'm going to hand back now, and we can pick up any questions that we might have or anything I've forgotten to cover.
So Richard, may I say thank you so much for that excellent presentation. It really, really, really was most helpful. So thank you. Can I just start with one quick question for myself? Is one of the things I think I get a lot of people inquiring about is this online scheme. Do you know any idea when it's going to be rolled out? I know you've been trialing it in Hereford, but when's it going to be rolled out nationally?
Exciting news for you folks. In under a month.
Hey, thank you.
You will have PGS digital in Chelmsford in March.
That's great. Thanks very much.
We've been trialing it since Christmas, and it has been a great experience, and it's a really super system. So.
Yeah, I think particularly in times of lockdown, it's such an obvious way to get people signed up, isn't it? Whereas we're all looking to do everything online, it makes enormous sense. So Tom, have we got any? I know we have. I'm sure we've got some questions.
We've got lots of questions, lots of really good practical questions. I've tried to group some of them together because people are asking similar things. So as starters off, there's been a few questions about how this works in relation to other forms of donation and giving. Can it work with one-off appeal donations, check payments, contactless giving, online giving, etc.
Okay. So, practically speaking, the reality is that giving to church is becoming more varied and more diverse, as to any charity and organisation. And the smart organisation will have as many giving choices available to it as possible. And Parish Giving Scheme will be only one of those. There will always be those who want to give in a different way, and that's possibly because they have a different reason or different connection to you. So clearly people who are going to be visiting perhaps once at a wedding or a baptism or something like that, or visiting your church, are going to want to perhaps give through contactless, which you will need to have available in church. So they're not necessarily for the same people. What we are doing here is moving the vast majority of what were previously envelope givers and standing order givers over onto Parish Giving Scheme, but also people in the wider community. So for instance, when we do write out for an appeal or a gift day, Parish Giving Scheme is always the #1 option we give to people for giving. And as part of an appeal, some people might want to give you a one-off donation, but there are just as many we are finding who are prepared to give on a regular basis. And do remember, of course, that regular giving is always worth more than a one-off gift, okay? One-off gifts can appear to be very generous, but for most of our people who give week in, week out over the course of a year will be giving more than that. So you just need to watch that. And the other thing to say is remember that the Parish Giving Scheme has the option to give monthly, quarterly, or annually. Most people will give monthly, but around 10% will give you an annual gift. So that's an option as well. Use all the choices and options open to you, is what I would say. There's not going to be one way going forward to give.
Thank you, Richard. So I guess following on from that, we've also had questions around what this means for admin, for treasurers, and to what extent it simplifies it or indeed makes it more complex. Do you have to run parallel admin processes, for example?
Okay. So depend on what admin processes you're doing at the moment. So for instance, if you're on a software program, such as that from data developments, some of you might be on that, those sorts of software programs now have an integrated function where you can where it will bring in automatically the Parish Giving Scheme income and the gift aid, okay? So depends on what giving program you're using. If you're using your own system, and that's great, Parish Giving Scheme certainly will not make it more complicated. It will make it significantly easier. First of all, you have live online access to your portal at any time, from which you can print a statement at any time in many different formats. You can print that for an individual giver if that's something they wish to receive for their tax purposes. You can print it as a total. For banking purposes, it all comes in one payment, not lots of little payments, and it comes in on one line, and then you get the breakdown in your statement. And of course, you get the breakdown between what is gift aid and what is not eligible for gift aid as well. So it's very, very easy to run. I mean, no issues at all. We've had no issues in this diocese around that. If you are somebody, you wouldn't be on this call if you were somebody who were totally IT adverse. But if we are looking at a parish where somebody is not doing their accounts on a PC or whatever, and is still, you know, working by hand, we just signed a parish here now with treasurer does not use IT and doesn't even have an email address, but she receives her parish giving statements in the post in the old-fashioned way. So we accommodate all clients.
Excellent. And then a related question again, really, here from someone who's got donations coordinator to manage giving. And
so donations coordinator will have that function built in.
Okay, yeah. So I think that probably answers that question. On a slightly different theme, then, about the inflation-linked increases. When do they kick in? Is it after the 5th of April? And who's responsible for writing out to the donors to tell them that's happening?
Okay, it's not a date. It's a 12-month anniversary from when you the personal giver makes their first commitment. So, for instance, mine increases in January each year because I started at that time of year. So it's 12 months. Remember, there's no compulsion to do it. 66% choose to do it, but there's no compulsion. And you get a letter in advance, an email to warn you when the next occasion is coming up, and you can choose to do that. It will also tell you what you've given in the previous year and what your new amount will be, and you can see the difference. The difference on that statement is usually very small, even for the most generous givers, because inflation doesn't run at any particularly high level on an average church gift. The interesting thing is, and I referred to it, what's superinflation, is that quite a considerable number of people, when they get that letter, call the Parish Giving Scheme. What do they say? They call the Parish Giving Scheme to say, well, gosh, that's a ridiculous amount, round it up, which is why you get superinflation, okay? So they double up. So that happens as well. In terms of who triggers it, it's all triggered by the Parish Giving Scheme, okay? The relationship on the giving is between the giver and the Parish Giving Scheme, okay? And then it's forwarded to you. So they manage that giving. You do local promotion, but they will manage the giving. They will do the letter, the increase, and all the rest of it, okay? And the gift aid, obviously.
Brilliant, thank you, Richard. And another question really from a sort of donor's point of view. Are all donations set for the first of each month or the first of a month of whichever period they're going out, or can donors choose which day of the month their donations go out?
Now, donation has to leave on the first day of the month. As you can imagine, we now have 55,000 donations going out to churches every month. So they have to all be on the same day. We just couldn't manage otherwise. Okay, great. And then the final question of the questions that have been submitted so far is about the scheme more broadly, about how the scheme's financed if 100% of donations are finding their ways to the PTC of church concerned. Okay, so we have the national church to thank largely for that. So the Archbishop Council grants to the Parish Giving Scheme. We also have some very other generous private donors and some grant-making bodies. And in the past, we've also had the support of the Diocese of Gloucester, who have not charged anything for the rent of the premises. So that's their gift to the national church and to your diocese and mine. So some very generous people living out what it is that we're talking about, I guess. So each diocese pays a fee. It's not a big fee. It's about, for our diocese here, I think we pay something like £12,000 a year. However, we, of course, here, this little diocese, we have nearly 8,000 givers. It's the cheapest form of giving there is. So we work it out per person. It is considerably less than envelopes. And given what some banks are now starting to charge for transactions and checks and the likes, it's considerably cheaper than that as well. So yeah, I didn't mention that. You know, I don't upset any bank people if you're on here, but we are it's not going too well at the moment. So, you know, branch closures is an issue, a practical issue for my treasurers here. I have treasurers who drive 35, 40 miles to bank their collection. And one of my treasurers said to me, he stopped his journey one Monday morning. He used to go every Monday morning. He pulled over on the side of the road, he turned around, he went home. Because he looked on his passenger seat, and do you know what he saw? He saw a bag of money. And he realized that the bag of money he was going to bank, okay, from the church collection, had less in it than he was spending on fuel to do the round trip. It doesn't make any sense, okay? So he went to PGS. And of course, things around banks seemingly not really, frankly, one in our business anymore in terms of transactions. So yeah.
Brilliant, thank you, Richard. That's the end of the questions in the chat, Mike. So I will hand back to you.
So has anybody else got any more questions? Well, can I just say, of course, if something comes to mind, please send me an email. I look, on behalf of my other colleagues in the other two episcopal areas, I look after the Parish Giving Scheme. So if you've got any questions that come to mind later tonight or tomorrow or next week and you want to know a bit more, please get in touch with me and I will do my best to answer those questions. And the other thing is, if you decide you want to sign up, I can send you a signing up form immediately. So I have the digital version of all those things available to you, so we can get you signed up really quickly and really efficiently, and we'll keep you informed about the online version, because I'm sure for some parishes that will be a real help. Well, Richard, I can't thank you enough for tonight. It's been really helpful to bring all that experience and share that with us today. So I think from all of us, thank you very much indeed. And do give our best wishes and love to that lovely Diocese of Hereford. I have very fond memories myself of that diocese, so please take them back with you.
I will, and thank you, sisters and brothers, for the opportunity to share with you. There's a lot of information, but I hope you get something of the passion that we have for it, but also the differences made to our churches. And I just want to share that with you, and it be the same for yours. So thank you for the invitation.
Yeah. And I think finally, just to say, Tom, we were sending out an email with information on it, and a copy of the PowerPoint presentation will be sent out too. And of course, as with all these webinars, they will be available online in the next few days or so. So thank you all very much. God bless you all. And I hope you all go back and think seriously, those that aren't already in the scheme, think seriously about joining the Parish Giving Scheme. God bless you all. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Good night, folks.
Bye.